Welcome to It's Not About the Money, a podcast in search of grounded fundraising. I'm Heather, and together with my co-host Andy, we look beyond the quick tips and formulas. Join us as we explore the nuance and complexity of ministry fundraising. If you want to thrive in partner development, not just survive it, this is the place for you.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Today we are super excited to have our friend Blake with us. He's been serving in the nonprofit world for about 16 years now in different capacities. 10 of those years abroad himself, serving in Asia and the Middle East in different capacities. And then 5 years serving in a home office in the role of coaching and sending. Blake, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, that's all very true, Andy. So I first got into this world actually right out of college. I had an opportunity to serve with this particular nonprofit to go for a year, where I served in China. Actually, I was teaching first and fourth grade students.
Whoa.
And through that experience, just my mind and heart got opened up for the world and missions. And soon after that, went to grad school. After grad school, it was 4 more years back to China, teaching at doing language school and teaching at a university for 2 years. And then entered my coaching, recruiting, fundraising role about the next 5 or 6 years. And then that turned into 5 more years back overseas.
Yeah.
In the Middle East.
Kind of the boomerang model.
I've noticed a 5-year trend. I don't know what that is about, but that's about seems how it's laid out.
How's your Chinese language these days?
Yeah, it's really funny. I never used Chinese, but now that I'm back in the States, I'll start thinking of the last country I was in, and Chinese words start popping up in my head.
Yeah.
But at this point, I mean, it's novice level.
You want to give a shout out to our Chinese listeners?
Oh, 你好，你们怎么样?
All right, well, guys, I'm excited to get started on this conversation. Today, we are recapping the episode that we had with Dr. Moreau on spiritual warfare. And man, I was thankful to re-listen to this and just remember that conversation. I would love to hear from you guys. What stood out to you?
Just first thing pops in my head. I appreciated what he said about confidence. If you're real shaky on the vision of what you're doing and you're any sense of call, it's really hard to communicate from that place with someone, as opposed to if you're excited and you have sort of that strong sense of call, the ability to communicate, in my opinion, is just a lot easier because people see that, they see your face, they see your excitement.
Yeah.
And even if you're not like the clearest communicator, they're like, I can tell this guy's invested.
Or the most charismatic.
Yeah. It's like something's, lit a spark under this person to do this. And so that was one thing that popped out that he said that I appreciated.
Right. Like, so how do you cast a vision for something if you haven't clearly expressed or thought through the vision yourself?
Right. And I think that's one thing sometimes coaches can be really helpful at, because not everyone, they might have a whole bunch of, inner excitement about something, but it's like, how do I speak this? And so sometimes with coaches, having them kind of boil down, just give me your bullet points of what it is that's drawing you, I think can be helpful with that.
Right.
Yeah. Also, I think, kind of related to some other points that he made in the episode, people might have a great plan for communicating, but if they haven't dealt with the scripts, kind of like the internal
doubts.
The internal doubts, the things that are running through their head as they're trying to communicate, maybe these beliefs that they've held about themselves, that they're not capable, or that, God won't provide, or whatever it is. I think, I really appreciated that he spoke at length to just the importance of recognizing those things and honestly seeing them as spiritual warfare, seeing them as something that I think, in his words, that Satan activates against us, these things that we've carried with us throughout life.
Yeah, it's like the enemy doesn't seem to really use material that isn't already there. When we talk about scripts in our lives, it's like he's not generating anything new. He's just magnifying what we're already telling ourselves. That was interesting. Like, he wouldn't say to me, for example, wow, you call yourself a hedge fund manager? You're a fraud. Because I would just say, yeah, duh, of course not. I've never struggled with thinking that about myself. He's not generating new content. He's just surfacing some of those shortcomings and frailties that we should have put behind us when we were made a new creation. So perhaps one weapon here or response here is just maybe some healthy self-realization and reflection.
Yes, that's another thing that stood out to me too, was recognizing the wrong ways of thinking that he had, and or the scripts that go in, over and over in his head.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and including myself, a lot of us, we kind of go into that battle with the scripts in our head, like as a new believer and a Christian, okay, I know I have this inner voice in my head. It's all about me and fighting it.
Mm.
And I have just over time kind of took on the mindset of, I'm not called to walk through this journey by myself.
Mm.
My risen King says I never leave you or forsake you. But
Amen.
not only that, like he works through people to, I think, help diffuse the script.
Mm.
Because sometimes
right.
my brain and my flesh just also amplify my doubts and Satan's voice. And there's a part of me that's times where it's like, I'm not strong enough to fight this right now.
Yeah.
And that's why you go to a brother or a sister, your church community, like, guys, I'm struggling and I need prayer. I need strengthening from outside myself, because I don't know anyone who's like 24/7. I'm Superman,
Right. Yeah.
And I don't think that's how we're supposed to be anyway. And so,
yeah,
I think one thing that popped up as I was just thinking about this was like one way to diffuse the scripts is obviously we want to speak truth to ourselves, but a lot of times it's having others speak truth to us and pray for us to help with that battle.
Yeah, absolutely. Into what you were saying, just in terms of how we always have our advocate with us, I really loved how he modeled that in some of his thinking. One of the ways that he dealt with that is just stopping and kind of inviting the Lord in and trying to reframe and really pray through whatever the feeling was or the belief he was holding about himself or something like that. I thought that was really good.
And it just speaks to the fact that it seems like Satan really loves it when we are in isolation. And he perpetuates that shame, so maybe that we feel like we can't reach out to somebody and talk about it. And that kind of starts that cycle of, I can't talk to anybody about this because I'm so ashamed, but that's exactly what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it reminds me of the garden a lot, of everything from God gives truth, and Satan's like, it is good, isn't it? It's really good, and he either amplifies something good to too much more than we should think.
Yeah.
Or once Adam and Eve sin, it's like, you better stay behind that tree.
Yeah.
God's coming.
Yeah.
And that's not the truth. I mean, God's calling them to come out from the tree. And so I appreciate what he said about, bringing his own sin and weakness out into the light, which is very difficult to do much of the time.
Right.
But for some weird reason in God's economy, it's like, you'll be strong when you admit and confess. You'll actually find the strength you're wanting when you're honest about your own weakness. And that's very difficult. Yeah. It's very difficult.
Yeah, I recently heard somebody sum that up, just kind of saying, we confess to God for forgiveness, but we confess to each other and it brings healing. And I thought that was really powerful. Yeah. I'm curious. So much of this episode was actually just kind of normalizing spiritual warfare, helping people see that it's not this, crazy out there experience. It's not necessarily finding some kind of supernatural force at work as much as, I think he said that spiritual warfare at an individual level is spiritual growth, and just understanding that, Satan as an opportunist tries to take advantage and maximize doubts that we have and just kind of, play off of those tapes or scripts or whatever. But I guess, Blake, I am curious, just in your own experience of living overseas or maybe even in the fundraising season, are there ways as you were listening to this that you could identify what you believe was spiritual warfare kind of at work, either in the fundraising or even in the serving season?
That's good. To tag onto that, do you feel like you were prepared for kind of that paradigm?
Fundraising?
In fundraising, like the spiritual side of things, like how that can really impact you as you prepare to go and as you actually serve in those contexts?
I guess maybe three things pop into my head. First one was having a plan as far as how to approach fundraising. Like he talked about, I thought it was interesting. He talked about Satan and his hierarchy of demons and how they're an organized, they have an organized attack. And looking back, as far as things that I think helped me was, well, if he's organized, it helps me actually to be organized.
Ooh, nice.
Like to fight back.
Yes.
And so I think when you have a good, clear plan, which generally I had from the beginning, thanks to my coach and just my own thoughts and ideas all kind of meshing together.
Yeah.
I think when you have a wise plan of attack, you can fight off, the evil one's plan of attack is one thing. Two, community. Man, just having people you can love and trust and shoot a phone call or message, email to.
Yeah. Say,
man, I'm pressing forward to raise funds and do the support raising thing. Please pray. And you're having those people who are like, I get it. Whether or not they've done or not, they're in your corner. Right. They're like, yes, you got it. I'm praying.
Yeah. Your inner circle.
Yeah. Having the prayer inner circle is another thing. And then the third thing is I can't remember a decent season. I became kind of underfunded while I was on the field at one point years ago. And then it's like, oh gosh, what a hard place to be. This is not what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to get underfunded while you're overseeing blah, blah, blah. And walking through that season of, okay, this is a faith battle and this can be discouraging and I feel like a failure. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. Yeah. But then it was just kind of like reapplying the first two of, okay, I need a plan to fight his plan. I need a plan to fight the enemy's plan. Yeah. And I need people in my corner to be praying.
Yeah. He wants us to feel helpless.
Sure. Yeah. And guilty and terrible. And we're all
those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
We are not slow to pass judgment on ourselves or to call ourselves a failure or to feel the weight of that. Yeah. When it could be, I firmly believe that sometimes maybe the Lord allows those seasons so that we remember how desperately we need him.
Absolutely.
That's true.
Yeah. That kind of segues into something else he said that I just felt was really powerful. I really loved his candor. I feel honored by how honest and raw he was with us in his conversation. Yeah. And one of the things he said that I was like, yeah, I don't hear many people say that, but I think a lot of people feel it, was around, when he was raising his own funds and it was just kind of this war in himself of like, do I need to throw away my faith if he doesn't come through? Like, God, if you don't come through, what do I make of that? And just wrestling with, what are my expectations of you, God, and are they rightly placed, or am I kind of calling success a very narrow thing when in reality you're always working? Yeah, curious if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I just think expectations can be really brutal, can be really dangerous. I think it's just so important to hold whatever happens, hold it with an open hand and saying, I'm trusting you to do this. I'm walking forward. Whatever it looks like is what it looks like.
I think when you're contemplating like a big faith step of, I think God's leading me to this, and I'm going to just go in this direction. I think you always kind of have to say, like in James, the Lord wills, I will do this. And it doesn't stop you from going in that direction. Like, I'm going to go to I'm going to be in Alabama tomorrow, if the Lord wills, and I'm going to head in that direction. But in the end, it's in God's hands.
Sure. Yeah.
Sometimes I think, letting go of the inner expectation and having that mindset by yourself, you're kind of like, okay, I'm there. But then it's like, well, what about everybody else's parents and, families and friends? It's like, what if, and that's where I probably feel more of some of the expectation stuff.
Does that translate to kind of feeling the weight of like, oh man, Lord, if you don't come through for me, like all these people are going to doubt, or all these people are going to question?
Well, it's like you kind of have to fight the mindset of, and you know what, even if there are people in my life who are going to tell me, yeah, you failed, or make you feel like you failed, even if that is the case, which is rarely, it's not as much.
Not super common.
Even if it does happen, it's like, that I'm going to be okay as well. Like, even if the worst case scenario happens. Like with Daniel, it's like, if we burn, well, we burn.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't take, it's not like a despairing attitude.
Right.
It's more like, I'm going to go and trust.
Yeah.
And if that's not what the Lord's will is, that's cool, but I'm going to keep moving forward. But it's that in and of itself is a battle.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think one thing, I found with support raising to help with some of that battle is I wanted to ask people to think about or consider coming on as a financial partner or something like that. I would say, all I want you to do is take a week and pray. And I'm good, even if we're going to be friends. If you don't give anything, it's not going to, that's not what this is about. You kind of have to trust the Lord enough. Like if he's calling you to do it, it's like, I trust that he'll stir hearts to be a part of this. Right. And so all I want you to do is take it to the Lord. Mm-hmm. And I trust if the Lord's like, you're not supposed to be a part of the giving part for Blake. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of takes the pressure off me. Not everybody might like that approach.
No, I like that because it doesn't put all the onus on like, how am I perfecting my pitch and just getting it just right. And like, it takes the pressure off of you. It really does. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because it can be really dangerous to put your trust in your pitch.
Yeah. That's a t-shirt.
That's a t-shirt.
It's our next sticker.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something he said that I really appreciated, and I think probably speaks to the importance of coaching or having a core team or having just people around you that are heavily invested into what you're doing. He said, find someone that is as honest with you as you need to be with yourself. People that are willing to call you on things, to hold you accountable, really stand with you when you need to hear hard things, or sometimes when you need to hear words of encouragement. You're kind of berating yourself, beating yourself up for something, and then you've got a word of grace. It's like cold water on a hot day.
Yeah. If you find that person,
keep them.
Don't
keep
let
them around.
Yeah. So there actually was something else I wanted to point out. I really loved when he was talking about the effects. So way back when he started fundraising, he worked with a church when he was working in Kenya. And now, even though he's no longer working in Kenya, he said that church is still supporting the work being done in Kenya. So I just thought that was really cool, like how his faithfulness back in the day connected these two entities that are now still meaningfully connected, and that church still receiving care and support.
That's huge.
Even though he's not in the picture anymore.
That's what it's all about, really.
Yeah.
Connecting the church's needs to the church's resources.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That makes me think of prior conversations we've had, like with Steve Shadrach, and he just mentioned mobilizing your network and how it's really important to understand that some people might not have an opportunity to be connected to this kind of work. And it's so meaningful to be able to draw people into being part of what God is doing. It's also really cool to think of that still happening without you once you're removed 15 years later.
Yeah.
What else, guys?
We've mentioned this already, but I did appreciate his honesty that he felt like he was actually using people. It was hard for him to get past that sense of almost like guilt. So I appreciated that candor, but I would maybe challenge that and say, is it really selfish if you're asking for money for ministry? And man, that seems to be a big block for a lot of people. If we can get past the notion that it's somehow like bad or wrong to ask people for money, and the end result is that we're drawn to, again, engage and re-engage in our communities. So Blake, I'm curious, like he was very honest with his scripts. So what were some of the scripts, if you can remember back to 16 years ago when you were first going about this? Can you remember some scripts that you would tell yourself as you were approaching the process?
I mean, I think some questions that come to mind are a question you would just ask yourself is like, what am I doing? And or should I really try to reach out to this person?
Right.
And or should I reach out to this person who I haven't talked to in a while? Yeah. Those types of questions.
Right.
Sometimes it wasn't a script. It was just more of I can be a little lazy. Like gotta put it. It's work.
It's work.
You gotta put in work to do it. Being like,
but what was the question behind that question of should I reach out to this person I haven't talked to in a while? What was the initial obstacle?
Is there like enough of a relationship for them to even feel invested in me?
Yeah.
which I think can be kind of a legit question. It's like, oh, wow, we went to high school together, Blake. We haven't talked in 20 years.
Yeah.
Like there's legitimacy sometimes to that
you're
question.
dating yourself here, Blake.
Right. Hey.
Did you feel like you were like taking advantage of a past relationship or like using him? Was that part of it at all? Or I hear that from some people sometimes.
I think sometimes if I have any of those feelings about a particular person or conversation I'm going to have, one, I'd really try to evaluate, why am I asking them? How do I want to ask them, knowing that we're not super close, we haven't connected in a while, and if I still feel kind of comfortable, I do feel like I can reach out, but I can't just reach out to them like I'm reaching out to people who I go to church with who we see each other every week,
right?
And there's a different type of dynamic. Yeah. So I guess the script would be, you're an idiot for reaching out to this guy or girl.
How could you?
Yeah, this is not even worth it, or. You are, or this would, I guess, a script would be you are just using them, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, it is interesting though. Just in light of another conversation we had with Mike Card and him talking about how God uses our mixed motives, and hear me clearly. I think if you know you're manipulating people, I think if you recognize in yourself, but essentially if you kind of feel like, man, I need to repent, but I'm going to do it anyway, that's wrong. But if
Yeah.
But I think that if we are approaching people and we're wrestling with like, oh man, it feels like I'm only reaching out to them because they're a person I could reach out to. Like, I don't know. I feel like the Lord can even use that. Again, if you're aware, like I am trying to just use people or.
Yeah, that's different.
I think also you could even address it, depending on the situation. It's like, you know what? I know we don't talk regularly, haven't talked in a while. I'm asking people and trusting God with something I feel like He's called me to do. And I'd love for you to at least consider what I'm about to tell you and take some time to pray about it. I think that maybe takes some of the, okay, you did just recognize that we haven't talked in a long time and blah, blah. And so, and then you're back to, and I trust the Lord with the results. If they're like, yeah, I don't even know you anymore. That's cool. All I can do is trust the Lord with however He's stirred you to give. Is one way to.
Yeah, we don't hang out much today or in the past 10 years, but at one point we hung out a lot.
Yeah,
and we were buddies. So I'd like to just include you in this.
Yeah.
I
do remember. He talked about dreams and visions.
Yeah,
briefly in that, and I remember a buddy of mine was like, I was the first time I considered going overseas. I didn't have any dreams or visions of Chinese people,
right,
at all. Only people I knew worked at the Chinese restaurant that I liked to go to, and that was it.
Yeah.
And then a buddy of mine was like, do you have a heart for these people? All this kind of stuff. I was like, no. I'm just kind of stepping out of my comfort zone and doing something I might grow to do. And so I wish God worked in my life more in the whole dreams and visions realm.
Right.
But there's times when I have dreams and visions where I'm like, that was scary.
I hope that wasn't from the Lord.
Yeah, I hope that never happens.
Yeah.
Every now and then I might have this random didn't I have a dream about this 2 years ago? That kind of thing.
That's called deja vu.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, just something like that. For me, I appreciate anyone who I've met people who became Christians through dreams and all that kind of stuff.
Certain parts of the world.
That just for me, hasn't been in my wheelhouse of experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I am curious with your experiences in Asia and then also in the Middle East, whether, I guess to use his term, the middle realm, the excluded middle realm,
right.
Whether you would say that you noticed a distinct difference in either of those cultures versus our own or even with each other. And by the excluded middle or the middle realm, I just mean I think the examples he gave were tarot readings and
evil eye, witch doctors.
Yeah, pointing to these very real elements at play in culture and in society, these experiences people seek with the supernatural.
Palm readers,
Yeah. I'm just interested to hear whether you saw.
Yeah, in the last country I served in, they read coffee grounds. But it's one of those. It's they do it for fun. Maybe a few people take it really seriously. But outside of that, my exposure in this particular Middle Eastern country and in China, I feel like I was mostly around a very secular mindset.
Sure.
Like not a high
Educated.
spiritualism
Yeah.
type of mindset. I mean, it'd be really interesting to, to be in a place like that and compare the differences. For me, it was more like, it was more dealing with intellectual questions, not, which is valid. I mean, that's all valid. I can't say, I was having power encounters with the devil. I mean, I can think of one distinct time in one of the countries where I was like, yo, I think there's a demon in my room. But outside of that, it was more the thought process of how they think about life and how they think. They're like, why do you believe that? Is different than you have a power bigger than my power that I,
Sure,
and that could easily happen. That can be places.
Yeah.
But the frequency of my conversations and stuff was more like, why do you believe? It's more like a little more on the intellectual level.
Ration it out for me. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is definitely still spiritual warfare, just in a totally different space.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious, given that you were in a country that would have had Muslim peoples, I'm wondering if, there were certain, I know that in both cultures that you served in, they have national holidays around, or can have national holidays around religious practices. Some people have reported that those feel more oppressive, or that it just feels differently during those times. Curious if that was your experience.
That is a hard question. I think I don't know if every believer experiences all of the oppressiveness and or oppressive feelings as much as every other believer.
That's fair.
True, yeah.
Because if someone didn't bring it up, I don't know how much I'd think about it during that season. I'd be like, yeah, I know they're celebrating this. They believe this. But what's also kind of hard and difficult is I remember the first month or so living in this last country in the Middle East. Every day I heard the call to prayer, and I was like, this is demonic. And I felt very like, man, I feel like they're just calling for Satan.
Yeah.
And then a month later, I'm like, did they stop the call? What's going on here? And they're like, you really think they stopped the call?
Yeah.
And they're like, it's because you got used to it.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
sometimes, like, living in those cultures, maybe there is an initial, for some people, there's more like an initial, like, wow, I feel the heaviness and oppression of a place. And then as you live there and you walk through those seasons where, like, I walked through Ramadan I think maybe 6 times. The first time was overwhelming, in particular because I was seeing all these animals get their throats cut.
It's natural. Yeah.
Right. And then over time, I was like, okay, Ramadan's here. Students are going to be kind of tired. Don't, be sensitive to not just eating a bunch of food in front of them. And that's kind of what it became. Yeah. It didn't become, but I was also probably in again, because of the country I was in, it's kind of one of those, these people, I don't even know how much they take this seriously, but
Sure. Yeah.
A lot of them anyway.
Yeah.
So
in your circle. Yeah.
Kind of varies.
Yeah. Okay, guys, well, kind of moving us towards wrapping up, I'd love to know if there's any takeaway or something that you think you'll see or do differently as a result of this conversation.
I think for me, the challenge would be just a deeper awareness of the scripts that I have in my own life. When I hear myself saying things to myself, just taking a moment to pause and evaluate and say, is that true? Where is that coming from? Do I need to listen to that? Do I need to argue? Yeah.
I think on the side of like fighting the fight well with fundraising and spiritual warfare, do your best in the pressing forward and pressing through the scripts in your head and all that kind of stuff to approach fundraising from the core of how God has made you and who you are. This will be probably a terrible example. You might have to cut this out. So, do you guys ever watch pro wrestling? Anyone?
Only in memes.
Okay,
Yeah.
So because I grew up watching pro wrestling.
Of course you did.
Of course, and so
As you do.
as an adult, they started really getting behind the scenes of what this whole industry is about. What's interesting is it's all about storytelling. Even like the biggest guys are like, we loved telling stories.
Interesting.
Which was really interesting to hear. And then this kind of repeated theme kept coming out about the really successful guys or guys who really kind of rose to the top. Yeah. It was like, and the theme was they always kind of rooted their character in really kind of who they really are already. It's just their characters or their amplified. But the idea was they were communicating whatever the story was, kind of from who they really are.
So The Rock really liked to cook,
right? Right. Heather's like, I don't understand what you're talking about, and that's okay. That's okay. But the idea is like fighting through. Like if you're a fundraiser who really, really struggles with communication, that's okay. That's part of who you are, and kind of starting from there of like, okay, this is something I really struggle with, and getting help with that, but still be who you are in your weakness of, hey, I feel uncomfortable, doing this, but I'm really feel called and excited to tell you about this opportunity. Or like he was talking about thinking real mechanically, it's like, this is how I think I know. This is how I think. This is not the best way to think about people. I acknowledge that. And from there, he moves forward. It's like, this is how I am.
It's not going to stop me.
Yeah, this is how I am. I still feel called. This still is an exciting opportunity. And yeah, I wrestle with this as well. Yeah. I think kind of just owning who you are and owning your weaknesses and whatever your deficiencies are, your sins, and being like, and that's okay, because every person in the world is that person.
Yeah. Yep.
When it comes to like people God's called. I mean,
absolutely,
we all come with that. And so maybe just moving forward from who you are, how God's made you, helps a lot.
Yeah. I think that even in the area of fundraising and partnership development, there can be a desire to just kind of become an overall optimized person. Get good at this, make this, do this, and just kind of get better in all the things. And because you're better in all the things, you're set up well to get fully funded, right? I feel like sometimes it can become that kind of formula, but to kind of go off of your point, it's just so important to remember that God has always used insufficient and broken people, right? I mean, Moses was like, yeah, I'm not a great communicator. Is there anybody else? Not me.
Yeah.
And God used him, and I mean, I think there's probably a fine line of assessing yourself and not just accepting, well, this is who I am, so I'm not going to strive for.
I'm not going to change.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think that's the heart that the Lord has for, the invitation and sanctification, but certainly it's not helpful to either hold like self-loathing because of deficiencies or sins, or
hold yourself hostage because of those things. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that acceptance and just realize like, hey, man, God is pleased to use even me in my weakness, to his glory. So I think that's a really great point.
Yeah. It's like yes, I see this about myself, but I'm still going.
Yeah. Yes. And God is still able.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I think I really appreciated when he was giving some of the tools around how he would encourage people to respond in the moment. A lot of them were psychosomatic. They involved mind and body. And at some point, he was even talking about how he's grown in awareness of the different sensations that his body has and kind of like the clues that gives him around how he's feeling.
Right.
I think that's actually really helpful because I think it's just important to pay attention to the things that we're telling ourselves and pay attention to how we're feeling in order to like go to the Lord in prayer. And I loved what he said about the Jesus prayers, the kind of breathing prayers. There's one that I recently came across. I'm not even sure if I've mentioned this before. I might have, but it was on a CD cover. I saw it on Spotify, but you breathe in Jesus and then you breathe out, you have my attention. And I love that because it's just kind of like inviting the Lord in and be like, Lord, what do I do with this? You have my attention. I'm looking to you, I like that.
The question, how are you feeling? If it's from someone who's like really wants to know, it's a very penetrating question because it's like if they really want to know and you trust them enough to be like, I know I can trust you with this. It's very like revealing / releases sort of the pressure of like, I have all this feeling.
Yeah.
And now you're wanting, by you asking and actually wanting to know, and in one sense being able to receive it, it's like, wow, you can be being true to the core of who you are, especially in your own struggles and weaknesses. It's actually very helpful and life-giving.
Liberating.
Yeah,
good.
I would say with the spiritual warfare part, we're not meant to do it alone. Part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, Blake. So knowing that the people that are listening to this podcast are most likely either on the front end of gearing up to fundraise or beginning fundraising, or they've been in it, it's something they're accustomed to, but everyone can always appreciate encouragement. I wonder if there's anything you'd want to say directly to our listeners from your own experience.
Mm-hmm. Two things come to mind. First, if you're at the beginning stages, I would encourage you ride that energy well. When you're at the beginning, you usually have a lot of kind of energy and gusto.
Everything's new.
Everything's new. You're like, oh, I got my people. I got who I want, all my lists, blah, blah, blah. Work hard during that season of high energy.
Yeah.
Try to do your best to get a lot done. Don't feel shame, when you don't do it perfectly, but riding the energy bubble can be a helpful thing.
Yes.
And then if you're like towards the middle where things are you feel like things are slowing down or you're discouraged, the ability to keep going, man, one thing is just I would tell people is, involve others to help you persevere. Because my kind of working definition of perseverance has sort of changed from look what I did to look what we did and look who helped carry me. Because I think in the end that's Christian perseverance. Because when we all enter the new heavens and the new earth, I'm first going to be like, I'm here because you're Jesus. You interceded and carried me in ways that and I think as Christians we can also say, man, I worked hard. I'm not here because I did this by myself. Right. I'm here because ultimately somebody carried me and
prayed me
me
through.
Yep. And so I think if you're in that kind of middle stage, getting others involved is helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, and one last question for you, Blake. Sorry to put you on the spot, but the other thing I would ask is, were there having spent the large part of the past 20 years living on the generous support of others, what was an unexpected blessing of that reality for you?
Being able to look someone else in the eye and say, your prayers were effectual. The reason I could do the work I did, and whether it was share the gospel, teach, have my good days of teaching, persevere through bad days, to tell someone and help them understand that they helped carry me it was a blessing to me to let someone else, because a lot of times we don't really think, my prayers or money is, I'm just doing it. It's because I'm supposed to do it. It's what Scripture says.
Checking a box.
Yeah, but, to be able to just, look in someone's face who's supported you in whatever way and tell them, no, seriously, like, I am so thankful for your partnership in this, whether money, prayers, or whatever, because, this was a partnership, and it blesses me to let somebody else know, like, wow, they were a blessing. Because a lot of times we don't think, sometimes as partners, we're just like, automatic withdrawal, $30, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, maybe you get some newsletters, but I think to understand, when they're really invested, it's like they're really, the part they're playing is impactful and helpful.
Yeah. You felt their prayers.
Yes. Oh my gosh. There's definitely times where I'm like, I feel like people or person is praying for me today.
Yep.
That's the only way I can describe this.
That's actually one of the things that I'm the most jealous for about my past experience of just living in China, was waking up in a certain moment and thinking, wow, people are praying for me. I can feel it right now.
Yeah.
And this is just a plug and reminder. If you haven't communicated that to your partners, consider this an invitation to do so.
A gentle reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Blake, it's been a joy. It's been an honor. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for let me come in.
Absolutely.
Be part of it.
All right. Thanks, guys. And see you later.
It's Not About the Money is presented by Provisio Fundraising Solutions. Provisio equips support-based workers with flexible training, practical resources, and one-on-one coaching. Find out more at provisiofundraising.com.